Okay, on the show today, Leslie Potter. She is a parenting coach, all things parenting and conscious parenting. Comes highly recommended by a mutual friend. Joining us from Boulder, Leslie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How you doing today? I guess it's morning time there.
It is morning. Yes, it's 8 o'clock here.
How are you?
What is it there?
It's 3 p.m. In the UK, so it's a sort of slightly sticky, muggy 3 p.m. And let's dive in. What's your journey with the body and with your work?
Yeah, well, I was born in a home to a raging alcoholic mother, and so I learned very early to leave my body, if you would say, and go into my imagination. So I began to live outside. And so my journey was one of avoiding embodiment, I would like to say.
I can relate to that. Okay. So avoiding the body, traumatic home. And what got you back in it? What switched there?
Well, one of the things I did love to do was dance. I was an actress. I lived in New York. I was, a crazy bohemian. I traveled Europe. I did all kinds of embodiment for pleasure. Right. But anytime there was embodiment and pain was involved, especially relational pain, I would actually leave. So I organized my life not to feel certain feelings. So at some point, I guess probably in my mid-30s, I read a list of codependency. Someone gave you the 15 things of codependency, and I think I had 13 of them.
Do you want to say what that is? Because it's sort of a bit better known in the US, I think. Most people in the UK may have heard it, but they might not know what codependency is. What does that mean?
Well, I would say a simple example for me, just to make it very simple, is that I didn't have a separate individual being. I had to merge with my mother to survive as a child. Mm-hmm. So I created very early neurotic patterns, which were healthy for me as a child to survive my, upbringing. But when I came out into the world, anytime I would move into a relationship, I would lose myself. I would just kind of merge into whoever I was with. So I couldn't set healthy boundaries. I couldn't take care of myself. So when I read this whole list, there were like 15, I was like 13 of them. I went and signed myself up for codependency treatment. Now, most people don't go sign themselves up, they get sent. Mm-hmm. But I'm a curious person, so I'm a seeker. And when
there's organizations around this. People might know about Codependence Anonymous, and this might sound weird to some people listening. Like, why would you have a problem with that? But like the basic idea of not being able to set boundaries, of tying your self-esteem to other people, getting involved in people, because that just causes mayhem for people if that's their pattern, right? It's very difficult to be happy if your happiness is totally dependent upon others and the reactions of others. I mean, well, this is not you're sort of saying it with a smile and a laugh, I'm guessing, because you've been through a long healing journey, but that's a fucking nightmare to someone. So I've got students who really have suffered from this.
Absolute nightmare. You can imagine as we move into parenting how much bigger of a nightmare it could be.
Okay, right? Okay, because say why. Let's spell everything out for the non-Boulderites listening.
Well, you can imagine when you merge with your children and their happiness becomes your life. So you can imagine, I see. Right? You can imagine being a child.
Doesn't every parent have that? I mean, every parent I've ever met I'm famous for being anti-parent, by the way. Every parent I've ever met has been slightly confused with their identity. I mean, something I see a lot is people's Facebook picture has their children in it. Now that's meant to be a picture of you. Why has it got someone else in it? They're not you. Like that seems to be almost every parent I know. So did you just magnify that?
Well, and if we merge with that, meaning they're responsible for our happiness, can you imagine what it's like to be the child? Right?
Okay, so the poor child has that put on them that they're responsible for the happiness, but making anyone responsible for your happiness is sort of a disaster, isn't it? Because we can barely control ourselves, let alone anyone else. Like that's a way to be miserable, surely.
Exactly. Now you have to remember we were all raised this way also, so this is passed down. Right?
Okay. There's degrees of this through the generations. Some people have it more than others, and I imagine especially for women, like. I mean, my mum, who I do love and adore, said, but you were part of me. And I'm like, yes, the key word is were, mother. you know. It's like I'm married now, I've been around the world, you know. So it's
Exactly.
and I know in certain cultures this, you know, all my Jewish friends are always making jokes about this. It certainly seems to be that sort of mother-child bond, which is of course going to be strong, seems to be exaggerated in certain people in certain cultures, right?
Yes, and we can learn if we train ourselves into healthy separation, we can have connection and separation. When you only
Okay.
want to connect, it becomes engulfment. So,
Engulfment, that's the good word. That's so engulfment is when you lose yourself, and that's almost held up as the romantic ideal as well, isn't it, Leslie? That we lose ourselves, you complete me, you know, this is
yes,
like most love songs are actually codependency songs, right? Like, you
yes,
know,
it's crazy. So when I began to explore that and really examine how I had fallen into that,
yeah.
that's when I began to start moving back into embodiment. It was not fun. It was not comfortable.
Get your own self
Oh, it was not comfortable because embodiment meant I had to go in and feel powerless and helpless and rejected and
back. Right.
all those things I had organized my life to run away from, not to feel, right?
We always say like, hey, welcome home to the body, like on this podcast, and come home and mindfulness of the body. It's so great to come to the anchor. So for a lot of people, the body's a nightmare. The body's just feeling shit they don't want to feel, right? Like the
Yes.
powerlessness or the helplessness, the trauma related, whatever. It's
Yeah.
just like, there's not a, you know, for those of us listening who are, say, yoga teachers or meditation teachers who just say casually, oh, come back to your body. It's nice. It's not nice for everyone.
Well, it's a counter-instinctual move for those of us that learned our strategy was to get out of our body to
Right.
survive. That was a healthy neurotic strategy as a child. But as you become an adult, and again, you want to have more of yourself, you want to have relationship, you want to be here, it's counter-instinctual to go back and get back in your body and feel all those things again. And becoming a parent, watch out. You're going to have to feel them
Okay,
all.
so what happens when you become a parent? What's the fucked up shit that might happen to me? Why are all my friends who are parents crazy? Is it just sleep deprivation? Is it this weird sort of narcissism seems to happen? Like what's the, because this is a huge taboo to talk about.
Yes.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, but I was talking to my friend Jane today and she said parenting, she's a mum, she said parenting is simultaneously undervalued and overvalued at the same time. Like it's held up as both the best thing in the world, the most spiritual thing you could ever do, but simultaneously you're not paid for it and you're sort of, oh, she's just the mum, you know, you'll hear this sort of thing. And that's a pretty tricky situation to be in.
Of course. And, you know, we all buy into it. I mean, it's really, really challenging. I'll give you my example. I had organized my whole life not to feel rejected because that was my core vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? I go to China and I adopt a young child that actually was abandoned and rejected. So it's like,
Okay.
duh, what was I thinking?
Wow,
Right?
something playing out there. Yeah. Chinese
It's like,
babies are 10% cuter though, statistically. That's a fact. That's a fact. So it's,
absolutely. So that. I couldn't get it in relationship. I kept leaving all of those. So here I am,
yeah.
finally, with my beautiful Zen master, my daughter. Right?
Why do people
And
say that children are Zen masters?
well, because
The child is not a Zen master. A Zen master is a Zen master.
she, and I've studied a lot, I've done a lot of Zen, and it felt like she was the strongest. The reason I say that was because I gave her permission where I couldn't get permission sometimes to my Zen master because of my egoic structure. But by joining with this child in this relationship, I began to turn back inward and take personal responsibility for my own embodiment and what that began to look like.
And why was that? Were you like, hey, this child I've adopted who I care for and want to well raise, I just don't want to fuck her up like I'm fucked up? Or was it that you just had to? Like what?
Unnecessarily. The truth was that I closed the back door. I was sure that I was not going to leave. In all my
You know?
other relationships, I had a back
Yeah.
door I could leave. I could leave this relationship, but there was something about being a parent that I made an agreement with myself that I was going to go through instead of leave.
You know, it does strike me that I think it's overstated when people talk about parenting as the ultimate form of personal growth and blah, 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 having, you know, not tried all the others. But it's the one thing that's very difficult to leave, right? Like you can get divorced fairly easy. 50% of Americans and Brits get divorced. Jobs we leave all the time. You know, the countries we leave. It used to be a permanent relationship that you were part of a nation state. You know, if I was American, I'd certainly have gone to Canada by now. You know, like there's ways in which we can leave those, but to leave your child, that's very rare, very rare. So that forces people, doesn't it, into that you can't escape. So if there's a pattern coming up, you can't just go, you know what, dump that girlfriend onto the next one. I think marriage is pretty good for that, but this is where I would say that it does seem like having children has this trump card on almost anything else I can think of.
Exactly. And then the way we escape, or the way I escaped in my parenting, was to go back into I'm the power and I'm the parent and you have to do what I say. And that was, again, an escape from feeling my discomfort. I had this erroneous belief that my daughter was causing my discomfort, so therefore she needed to fix it by behaving. My daughter was not causing my discomfort, she was triggering it. That discomfort in my body had been there since I was a wee one, right?
It's sort of fucked up to blame a 3-year-old, isn't it? You know, like, I mean, because when we're with an adult, we can say, look, the problem is them, I'm fine, but they're fucked up, the problem is them. But when it's a 3-year-old, you've got to go, listen, you know what, I need to take responsibility here. This has got to be my side of the street.
And think about how much power you give a 3-year-old when you blame them, when you think that they're causing your pain.
Okay, there's a lot to put on them, isn't it, this 3-year-old? And it is also, tell me about this, it's the only time in your life that you get to be an absolute fascist dictator. Now, unfortunately, you can't hit your kids very much anymore in the UK. That's frowned upon. You know, you can still shout at them. You can still send them to bed. Now, I can't do that with my employees. You know, I can't do that. I tried that shit with my wife. I'd survive about 2 seconds. Like, you can't do that with any other human being. It is a unique situation of power, even if you don't. And who wouldn't be tempted to, you know, they say, is it power corrupts, and the, you know, absolute power of being a parent must corrupt? Absolutely, surely. Like, how do you deal with that amount of power over another human being?
Well, you begin to, if you're willing to examine yourself, because it feels so uncomfortable, if your guilt and shame gets big enough, hopefully you begin to turn back in and you begin to examine, my power is coming out of a feeling of powerlessness. My powerful behavior is because I feel so powerless with this 3-year-old, because I can't get them to listen to me. I can't get them to do what I want. I can't get them to get their shoes on. I can't get them to leave the house. I feel so powerful.
That's the interesting thing, is actually you don't have a power over a child. Well, I've worked with quite young children, and if they don't want to get their shoes on, they're not getting their fucking shoes on. And they, unless you're prepared to physically abuse that child, which is disgusting, you just can't make them. Like, and they, at that point, I remember with times I've been working with kids where first time I was Camp America when I was 18 or something, and I just went, there's literally nothing I can do here. This kid is not going to get out of bed. This kid is not going to go on the hike or whatever we were doing that day. You are powerless, and you're like, shit, I've tried every trick in the book and it's not working.
Yeah. So the minute I felt powerless, of course, I went down in my body, right, into those feelings when I was a young child, and I was powerless with my mother. So then as parents, we began to position as victims, right? So I felt victimized by my 3-year-old, which is crazy. Like when we break it apart, it's like, what? How could that happen? But it wasn't, when you're triggered, I wasn't an adult. I wasn't with my 3-year-old. I was feeling like now I'm back here with my mother and I'm a big person. So now I can overpower.
3-year-old trying to look after another 3-year-old, and that's a big ask. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So it's bringing stuff up, and this is what, you know, where parenting becomes the personal growth practice. It brings stuff up, you care deeply, and you can't get away from it.
Yes. So if we take personal responsibility, such as any time that my daughter would like get mad or slam the door, hit me, she was a hitter, instead of trying to control my daughter and have power over her, I began to ask myself, how was I not emotionally safe? How was I not truly embodied in my safety?
Can so the personal things, there's someone I care about very deeply who has that problem with their child. Yeah. Because it's quite, people think about hitting kids, but kids also hit their parents, right? That's a sort of thing.
But it was always, I could always track it back instead of going, we don't hit, or you're disrespectful. That would all be about me. I could always track it back to I was pushing, or I was pulling, or I was forcing, or I had an agenda. right?
Yeah.
So of course my daughter would do this. Like if someone was going to attack her in the world, wouldn't I want her to hit them if she didn't
Yeah.
feel emotionally safe or physically safe?
Yeah.
So instead of you need to do what I say, you need to listen to me, I began to turn back into my personal responsibility of how was I not safe with this child?
Mhm.
How was I not truly embodied in my own safety so I could enter into this child's world in a way that they could perceive as safe?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
big work.
it strikes me, if you have unexamined neurosis, unexamined needs, unexamined patterns, as we all do, that they're going to get outed pretty quick in that relationship.
Absolutely. And for me, it's the one area parenting that is more unexamined than others. Like, especially if I was a spiritual seeker, you know, I did all the spiritual work, I did all this personal work, but I had very unexamined beliefs around parenting, right? I
Right.
really,
Right.
yeah. So I really had to examine because I was in so much pain because I swore I was not going to be my mother. And all of a sudden there I heard her voice coming out of me, right?
That seems to happen. I've heard that from many people. I've seen it when I've even looked after kids. I've seen that. So why does that happen? Is it because I guess we don't have that many in a non-community-based society? How much parenting have we actually seen? Like, I'm not around parenting
Yeah.
closely on a daily basis, right? I'm not really exposed to it. I've seen my sister, I've seen my mum on the and dad on the other side of it,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen that many examples, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
where do we model that from? It's something that most people feel they don't need to take classes in. Like, most people I know who buy a dog go to dog training classes. It's just sort of standard. You buy a dog, you have to have a license to do that in the UK, and then you go to sort of 4 or 8 like basic dog training lessons. That's considered a good thing to do the first time you buy a dog. And someone said to me that, oh, you're going to buy a dog, you want to buy this kind of dog, you want to get it from a good breeder, not a rescue dog if it's your first dog, and this is how you learn to deal with a dog. But nobody takes parenting lessons, do they? Like, that
Well,
would be, there's some shame in that almost.
even if they do, they usually take parenting lessons about how to control behavior. Like
Uh-huh.
good behavior is the gold standard in our culture.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
as
As opposed to emotional, supporting the safety of the emotional child. So if we go from the belief that feelings drive behavior, so
uh-huh.
when you were a young child and you had an embodiment experience, let's say you
Yeah.
didn't get that candy that you wanted that candy so bad, you thought about it all day and your mom said no, and you have this embodiment experience where you think you're going to explode, and then
Mhm.
you go hit your mom, right? So
Uh,
what happens when you go hit your mom?
yeah, I wouldn't have ever hit my mum. That would have ended quite badly. I had an Irish mum.
Right.
Like,
So, but if you did, you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get consequence, you're going to get
yeah.
punished, you're going to get told you're mean, you're bad, you're wrong.
Okay, yeah, got it. Yeah.
Well, hold on, wait a minute. So would you want to stay in your body then?
Okay, so the child disembodies at that point because of the shaming, because of the being shouted at.
Well, like, who wants to get in trouble? I mean, if this doesn't feel pleasurable, the body's supposed to be a pleasurable, experience. But when you've got this intensity and then you act out, because you will, if you get too much right now, if you got too flooded in your body, you would try to get it out some way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? But you're 3 years old, you do it inappropriately, let's say for the adult, but for the child, that's what you would do. You would go and like try to get it out. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Why are the children of American liberals so miserable? So I've worked with children in about 20 countries. I've seen children in Ethiopia who, their parents would just hit them around the back of the legs with a stick and the children would run off laughing. I've worked with children in, many countries around the world. And the most miserable and also just sort of unpleasant children I work with were actually in Marin County. The children of American liberals seem to be particularly unhappy despite all this sort of emotional intelligence stuff. Why is that? The conservatively parented children seem to be actually happier.
Well,
Not just better behaved, but happier.
yes, and I don't think it has to do with the liberal or the conservative. I
Oh,
think
it
it has
does.
to
It
do,
definitely does. I've been around more children than most people, and
yes,
it definitely
and
does.
it has to do with our examination of our own embodiment. I really found that to be true for myself. So it has to do with the examination of when I feel, I'll give you the example of me. I did not want to be my mother. Okay. And I grew up in a very conservative Southern home. I grew up in Mississippi, right? So I had a very conservative background, very
Yeah.
punitive. I did not want to be that. So I flipped over to the other side where I did not want my daughter to feel what I felt. Why? I mean, they're feelings, right? But I didn't want her to feel what I felt. So I began to get way loose. I didn't set healthy boundaries. I didn't take care of myself. I
Right.
wanted her to be happy. So in that case, then you can see if I flip to the other side, what do
Yeah.
you think my child's going to take on?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why the kids I've seen were so miserable, because they didn't have any I saw the same thing at the Buddhist festival in the UK. So people think I'm just being anti-American. With the kids of all these sort of super permissive Buddhists were not happy children. They weren't happy at all.
But it's not. I really want to let you know, it's not about setting boundaries on the child. Okay, in our culture, we say children need limits and boundaries. They will be limited and bound if we will set healthy boundaries. But we are so afraid to set healthy boundaries because we do not want to feel selfish, abandoning, and rejecting of the other. Okay, we go back to that codependent place again, right? I never wanted my child to feel abandoned and rejected. She was abandoned and rejected. She needed to feel those feelings in a healthy home where that
Yes,
wasn't actually happening.
disallowing of feelings is what you're talking about here.
Yeah, it was like I was, if we have an erroneous belief that we can make someone feel a certain way, we're going to be in big trouble. Right?
So
Right.
where did you learn about to sort of change something different then? Are there people teaching this stuff? Did you work it out the hard way? Like, how did you shift course there?
Well, I began, again, I'm a person that loves to examine things. So I created a process called the safe seat process for myself, because I noticed every time that my daughter said no, I would feel rejected and I sounded like my mother. I would go, well, I don't care about you anyway. Well, just forget it then. And these were all the things that I had heard my whole upbringing that I hated. So I'm going to give you a metaphor. The reason I created it. Do you have the game of tag in Europe?
Yeah. It has different names, but it's the one where you touch each other and then you're it, right?
Yeah, you chase each other and somebody chases you.
Different names, but we have the same game. Yeah.
So think about when you're 3 years old and you're playing the game of tag and you're running around and you're having a great time. It's the first time and you're really excited until somebody's about to tag you. And then what happens when you're 3? And you're about to get, you freak out, you lay down on the ground and you go, I quit, or you run off the field, or you hit the tagger because your amygdala, your brain, gets this signal that you're in danger. Okay, so in the game of tag, what do we create for the child?
Fun.
We create a safe base.
A safe base?
Safe base? Do you not have that in Europe?
Oh, it's like a place you run back to and then you can't be tagged when you're on the base?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I get what you mean. So you go there and you're fine, then you run out and it creates a way for them to calibrate stress and return back to that.
Exactly. So the safe base is a place where I can run over and I can breathe and I can go, oh, I'm actually not in danger. We look out and we go, oh, actually they're having fun out there. So then we run back out and we do this over and over and over again. That's how we build our regulatory system.
Right.
We're in
Kids do that with
danger.
their moms, right? They go to their mom, they go to explore the world, and they get scared, they go back to their mom, they go back to the world.
Yes. But in parenting, we are getting tagged all the time. I was getting tagged every time my daughter said no and I felt rejected. I was getting tagged. So I wanted to say, well, just forget it. Just like the kid, I wanted to walk off the field and say, I don't want to be a parent. I don't like this. I was doing all these crazy behaviors. So I thought, what would happen if I created a safe base, a safe seat for me to go and come back into my body, feel the sensations that are happening instead of going out here. So I began to sit and I would feel those sensations. It would be hot. It would be really hot in my body. I would be tight, but they weren't dangerous as an adult. Those sensations I could tolerate.
The safe seat is for the parent.
Yes.
You go away from the child and you leave them doing whatever they're doing in front of the TV or whatever. And then you go to yourself and you come back to your body and you notice your sensations.
Yes. And then you start going, oh, actually, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm not in danger, just like the kid at the base. Okay, I'm in danger. And so then I can look out and go, oh, my kid is just watching TV. They're not emotionally threatening me. They're not rejecting me. They're not making me feel powerless. They're not making me feel helpless. They're just watching TV. So if I want them not to watch TV from my adult stance now, I can get very creative. I can go sit down with them and find out what they're enjoying. I can move them to another activity. But if I'm emotionally triggered and I feel threatened by my child, that's that codependency again. If I'm attuned and now I feel threatened by them, I'm going to take them out. Because if you're threatened, just like the kid, they're going to either, you know, run off the field, or they're going to hit the tagger, they're going to fall down.
But isn't this just being a grown-up? I mean, like, to hear there's like a special safe seat, it sounds like a naughty step, you know?
Well, when I
this
was
is just
triggered,
grown-up shit, right? I mean, like,
yeah, but when I'm triggered, Mark, I'm not a grown-up.
yeah. I mean, I know you're not acting for that grown-up self.
Yes. So the safe seat was a place for me to go grow myself up.
Okay.
Instead of
Well,
acting out as a child.
Yeah, because a child parenting another child isn't the best thing.
Well, it's not, because the child actually has the more power, because we're perceiving that the child is dangerous. So they have the more power. So it's not a safe situation. So I recognized, instead of acting out on my daughter, I needed to go and just take a moment, just go to my safe base, take my deep breath, come back into embodiment as an adult, not as a child. As a child, I couldn't tolerate that intensity. And then recognize that I am an adult and my child needs me. I don't need my child to change. My child needs me to be a safe person for them. I don't need my child to be safe for me as an adult.
Sure, I mean, the idea that you're threatened by a child, for me, is like bizarre. I mean, I've never been in that situation, so maybe I'm missing something here.
Emotionally, we're talking emotionally.
Yeah, I don't believe in the concept of emotional safety. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So let me give you an example. So if you're a child, if you've asked them, I know you don't have a child, but if you've asked someone to do something and you've asked them 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and they're just ignoring you.
The right? Stressful and the control freak side of me comes up, for sure. Yeah, I've been around children in that situation.
So what do you start to feel?
Stressed. I wouldn't say I feel unsafe. It's just stress. It's just.
But do you start to feel powerless? Do you start to feel helpless? You can't get this person to listen to you, right? What do you start to feel like when you're like, I'm trying to get you to listen to me?
I've been in that situation of being frustrated with a child. I mean, that's part of dealing with working with kids, you know.
Yeah, but when you have that feeling, it is going to track back to that early time for you. When I feel powerless, it tracks back to when I felt powerless as a child. And then I act that out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that early childhood stuff can come up in any stressful situation. Yeah. Okay, let's get practical then. So what are your tips then for parents out there who are maybe relating to this? They're thinking, shut up, Mark, come on, just give something useful here.
I just did. You know, I just gave
the
him
safe seat. The safe seat. So the safe seat is to go. And I guess obviously the child has to be left doing something, you know, not playing with matches at the time or something, right?
Of course. I mean, that's just a given. But the operative is you have to ignore the behavior, which is very hard in our culture because we're focused on the behavior. So you have to be willing to ignore the behavior unless it's dangerous. And then go grow yourself up in your safe seat. Then come back and take personal responsibility for what was my part. Why did my child slam the door? Why did they roll their eyes? Why did they hit me? I must have had a part in that. Was I pushing? Was I pulling? Was I forcing? Did I have an agenda? Was I powering over? What's my part?
So you sort your side of the street out. And that question can be quite useful. I have a friend of mine, she always used to ask, how old are you now, Mark? Yes. And it's like, I guess if you're in charge of kids and you've gone back into kid mode, it's probably best to walk away at that point and take a breather, you know?
Yes, and grow yourself up, just like the safe base. Just go back and go, oh, okay, that's all it is. I'm my brain, it's literally our brain feels threatened, right? Especially if we had a lot of threat as a child, right? So that body memory, we go to embodiment again. The body memory has a memory. When I start to feel powerless, my body goes, I'm 3 years old again and someone's overpowering me. Even though my mind goes, oh, I'm an adult and my child is 3, my body has a memory. You know this from embodiment.
Sure, it's not a logical thing. Do you think that working with kids, being around kids, parenting kids, brings up some of our earlier stuff more than other stressors? For example, you know, you could be annoyed that someone stole your parking place, right? But like, is there a way in which kids particularly bring out our own early childhood stuff, would you say?
Yes, because we're paralleling. I mean, we're going to see
Mhm.
ourselves, right? We're going to try
Okay.
to treat them how we were treated. And also, we have a belief that we should have power over them. We have a
Uh-huh.
belief
Uh,
that we are the parent. Like I like to say, my daughter didn't get the memo that she was supposed to come down here and make me happy or behave the way I needed her to behave so I wouldn't feel discomfort.
so
Right?
yeah, I get that idea that they might not, you said a 2-year-old works this out very quickly, don't they? They go, well, hang on a minute, like, what do you mean you're in charge? What do you mean no? That's almost an affront to everything a 2-year-old is. And there's a way in which, particularly when I've been in the States, it's like a lot of people, particularly the sort of liberal side of things, have forgotten that they're the parents and they are the one in charge. And that natural order has somehow, there's an attempt to flatten a natural hierarchy, because there is a healthy hierarchy between a parent and a child.
Well, but again, even when we go into the belief, first of all, that we have to, that we can let our child or not let our child
Yeah,
do something,
yeah.
even when we take that stance, we aren't seeing another, actually, we're not seeing our position of that. What an honor that we get to lay the ground for
Mhm.
another human being, right? We have to understand child development. We have to understand embodiment is really messy. It's really intense for children. How can a
Mhm.
little tiny body take on, like, think about if you have a new baby and you take it to a rock concert, right? Because you
Right.
love rock concerts. And this
Yeah,
little
yeah,
baby's body is just
yeah.
like reverberating with the sounds, right? So when we don't
Mhm.
understand that a little baby, if that happens, is going to start screaming and crying, and then you're going to get mad at it because the people next to you want the baby to be quiet. And, it's like if we don't understand the embodiment process of a
Yeah.
child and how messy it is, we are going to overpower. We're going to see that as a threat. We're going to see that as, like you're doing something to me.
Yeah, and that personal responsibility piece makes a lot of sense to me. And not holding a child responsible for your feelings and emotions is sounds like basic sort of emotional hygiene to me. So
Yeah.
that makes sense to me.
But it's
And
hard. It's difficult. Who wants to feel discomfort? When you think
yeah,
you can control your child, it feels so easy. If we think our child caused that discomfort, doesn't it
yeah,
sound easier to control them than to work with our discomfort?
hmm hmm
Right?
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, that's parallel to many situations in life, isn't it? But yeah. Okay. So what about just helping kids not get so disembodied? I mean, other than sort of not beating them, not abusing them, not
yeah.
screaming at them, not taking them to rock concerts when they're too young. But there is a place for a child at a rock concert with the correct headgear and earplugs, I would say. I've seen little rock kids being quite happy at a very young age at a rock concert with the ear mufflers. So other than that, what beyond the sort of obvious, don't beat them, don't fuck them, kind of just basic good stuff. Like how do we stop kids getting disembodied? That feels like part of this
we do
mission.
our own work. We begin to take personal responsibility. We grow ourselves up. We become adults. When we're really adults, we will understand that our children are not out to get us when they're throwing a fit because they
Yeah.
didn't get candy.
Yeah.
We will understand that their body is just going crazy and that they can't control it. So we will go in instead of like, if you do that one more time, I'm never going to give you a candy again. We
Yeah.
will go in and say, oh, sweetheart, that is so intense in your body right now. Come here. Let me hold you. Let's ride through this. Come on. We're going to stay here. We're going to stay with it. We're not going to take it personally. And parenting is such a personal thing for people. It feels like a personal affront when your
Mm,
child throws a fit.
that's interesting. So how do we not take that personally? Because I definitely see people take their kids' victories very personally. My little darling did this, my little darling did that. They take it very personally. And I'm like, okay, well done. Your child's good at sports. This reflects on you in no way. Your child did well at maths. That doesn't make you clever. And that's a basic codependency thing, isn't it? Pride in one's child that way.
Yes,
But
it
but
is.
it it's difficult not to take it personally. I've definitely gone both ways with this with kids. There's times I've gone, a kid has sworn at me, hit me, bit me, and because I work with special needs kids as well. And I've just gone, okay, you're a child. I will be nice to you. this is not behavior I've been remarkably forgiving with children, actually, remarkably. And if a adult ever bit me like that, I probably wouldn't respond quite so patiently. But other times I've gone, it's me. I'm a bad, carer in my case, rather than parent. How do you not take it personally? What's your tip if someone finds they're taking this thing that's 50% genetically them personally?
You do your work. You do your safe seat. You get healthy separation. You separate out. You don't fuse with the child, that you think that you engulf them. You think, oh, they're responsible for my happiness. So if they're not happy, there's something wrong with me. No, they're just not happy. It's okay for your children not to be happy, right? If you have healthy separation, right? You can be happy and your child can be unhappy if you have healthy separation. It's okay. But if your child's unhappy, and
I've seen almost no mothers that could do that. Like, and some fathers more, but not a load, and almost no mothers. That separation.
Because we were trained not to. That's what I say. We were trained to disembody from the time we get here, because we're trained. We're trained to love others, to care for others, to be generous to others, to be, all these things. But were you taught to love yourself? Were you taught to keep yourself safe? Were you taught to be generous to you? Were you taught to be effectively selfish?
Is there a gender difference here? I mean, I know we're generalizing, and that's dangerous in the modern world. And it does seem like there is a gender difference I've seen in how adults I know relate to their adult parents. And, obviously it's cultural, whatever, and I would actually have quite a feminist lens potentially around this, that women particularly are taught to make their happiness depend upon others, for example.
Yes, and I think it's role oriented.
Yes,
because if a male steps into that role to be the caregiver, often some of these same things will come up, because the parent, what's the mother role or the caregiver role?
Okay. Got it. Right? That's a nice distinction. So in that mother role, you're more likely to be like that. Whereas the dad can be like, no, that's how it is. My job's to be that traditional dad role, whether it's done by man or woman, is you have to have separation, because you have to say, do your fucking homework, right? You need that separation. You can't be like, but don't make me sad while you're doing that, right? That's part of the dad role, is to do that.
Yeah, well, the healthy masculine is more about separation. The healthy feminine is more about connection, but we have to have both.
Yeah.
Right.
Different pathology. What's the opposite of codependency? Like, what's the sort of relating pathology for that? Would that be psychopathy or something?
Here we go. It's that we can go back on that one.
That blah blah. Because codependency is a bit foreign to me. So excuse me if my questions are a bit ignorant. I don't really get it. I probably got the opposite problem. Callousness, maybe. I don't know, something like that. Because someone that's codependent can hear what you're saying as callous, couldn't they? It's like, what do you mean you can be happy while your child's sad? That lacks compassion,
Yeah, yes. Because we just have to go back into our early, how we were trained. We have to examine our early beliefs, right? We have to examine, where are we in our embodiment? It really comes back to embodiment again. If I'm really in my embodiment, I'm going to be able to healthily separate while someone else is doing their dance move that's different than mine.
You sent me a question about self-aggression. People often talk about self-kindness or self-care, but let's talk about the other side of things. I like that. What is self-aggression? Do you mean like how we talk to ourselves? Like, what do you mean?
Absolutely. If my daughter doesn't behave and then I tell myself I'm a piece of shit mom, or I'm terrible, or it's called self-aggression. So anytime
mums are awful at this. Like, occasionally I'm coaching people that I'm a terrible human being and a terrible mother. I'm like, what the fuck? This is harsh. Like, it's pretty full-on, isn't it?
Yes, and also anytime if we other aggress on our children, it's actually a self-aggression. Because if I was a good enough mother, my child wouldn't be acting this way.
Oh, I see. Like, if I was, if I really was on top of my shit, I wouldn't be shouting at my child in the supermarket who's screaming.
Yes, especially conscious parenting gets really crazy that way, because I should always be peaceful and loving and kind.
Tell me about, I don't really know the scene. Conscious parenting, from what I've seen of it, it looks sort of disgusting and soft and wet, and I don't particularly like the look of it. But what this conscious parenting, I guess, is a whole scene. It's a whole thing in America and in a few other places, Germany maybe too. What is it?
Well, it's just like, even I will give you an example: conscious parenting, attachment parenting, traditional parenting. They're
Uh,
just like little buckets, right? Where we put things in and we have a concept, right? And then everybody reads that concept through their conditioning. So conscious parenting, many people will read it as that I'm always going to be peaceful
Gotta
and
be
loving.
nice, spiritual bypass.
Everything's going to be wonderful, right? And it's really painful when you get into a messy, relationship, which is parents and child. It's really, children are messy. They're wonderful.
They
They're
don't care
embodiment.
about your hippie philosophy, do they? They don't give a shit, kids. They don't give a shit.
Well,
Yeah.
their embodiment is, you know what embodiment's like when you're first coming in. It's messy. It's intense. It's a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if we
Yeah.
don't understand the embodiment process, which many of us don't because we had to disembody, we go rational and we think, oh, well, that 3-year-old should be able to sit in that restaurant with all that noise, with all those stimulation, and they should be able to sit still and they should be able to mind their manners and be kind to everyone. Right. And the
Yeah.
3-year-old's body is like going like this because they're offering them crayons, they're giving them chocolate, there's people screaming, there's noise, there's this, and the 3-year-old's body's like this. So what finally happens with the 3-year-old? They go, ah! And then the parent gets mad at them and says,
Okay.
I'm never going to bring you back to that restaurant ever again if you act that way. Well,
Right.
why did you take them into that restaurant? Like, why didn't you recognize that their body was getting overstimulated and titrate that for them, right? And support them and say, we're only going to go in for 10 minutes this time. Next time we'll do 20.
Okay.
We don't do that.
Let's get to the important stuff here, Leslie. What do I do when I'm in a cafe and someone's in there and their kid's screaming and they're not doing anything about it? And it's, I'm trying to have a meeting or do some civilized adult shit. They think it's a crash. It's not. I'm on an airplane, maybe. The child's crying and screaming. The parent's not doing anything. Is there a way I can support that parent to shut that child up? This is the important stuff. What do I do?
On that airplane, why don't you start singing a lullaby?
Singing, I could do that. That's fun. I could do that.
Right?
Singing a song.
Instead of feeling your discomfort and thinking that baby should take care of you, you're an adult. Why do you think that baby that's on an airplane that's trapped, whose ears are hurting?
Wow, I'm an adult. I'm not an adult responsible for that child.
Yeah, but you're an adult and you can recognize that child is on that plane. His ears are burning. His embodiment is going crazy. He can't soothe himself. He's 9 months old. You're this beautiful, responsible adult. Why don't you start singing a lullaby?
Thank you. That's a nice one. I would try the lullaby one, though. As a man, if you interact with children at all in public, it can be immediately frowned upon. But it's kind of one of the sad things about being a man. Okay, and in the cafe, is there a way you can talk to parents without them freaking out? Because in my experience, if I talk to parents about anything to their children, they get massively defensive.
First thing you got to do is feel your own discomfort. Okay, you got to ask yourself,
okay,
where am I coming from?
I'm trying to work. There's a kid screaming. I'm annoyed.
But where am I coming from? Like, okay, they have a right to be in there, just like you have a right to be in there, right? They do. I mean, it's a free restaurant, right? So why is your comfort more important than theirs?
Well, I look at it like smoking. It's totally fine to do it, but I don't want to breathe the smoke. It's like I don't want to hear your child screaming.
So then you leave.
So it's okay if I walk into a restaurant you're in and start smoking next to you, because you can leave.
Yeah, I can leave. I'm an adult. I can.
So leave. You're okay with smoking in places you go, because it's.
I don't go into places where they're smoking.
Well, unfortunately, there's no job. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate.
I know you are. I know,
but
I'm playing with you.
Are out there who don't have a voice, who are just annoyed by this constantly.
I know, but I'm playing with you with, first of all, safe seat. Deal with your annoyance. Say, oh, wow, of course you're annoyed. Of course you want them to stop. Of course that's intense. Of course you just sit with that. And then you come back into your adult, like I say on the airplane, and you go, okay, what are my creative options here?
Yeah.
I can sing a lullaby, or I could move my seat, or I could, say something to the woman.
The parents are terrorists and get them removed to the back of the plane in chains.
Exactly, right? That's from your discomfort. That's a young strategy. That's from your discomfort. I want to have power over that discomfort.
Joking aside, one thing I find is rather than having sort of being critical, because parents are remarkably defensive about that, is actually just say, can I help?
Absolutely.
And I've had quite good response from that a few times where I've had to say, listen, I work a lot with kids. Is it possible that I can help? And I'll
That's
play a
the
little
adult.
game or do something like that. Sometimes just distraction is one thing I do to help parents out when I see them. Is a child can be in quite a certain mood, and then if you distract them, like just start walking around on all fours, and the kid stops having attention and goes, why is that man on all fours? And then he's just curious. I'm walking and I start making cat noises,
Because
right? Like they're just,
you're not judging now. You're not judging. You're not needing, you're
I
not
never
thinking
judged
that,
the kid. Never
you're
judged
not
them.
thinking that child caused your discomfort, so therefore needs to fix it.
No, I hate the parent, not the child.
Yes,
So it's
but the parent is a child in that moment.
I know, and you know what?
When a parent, let me tell you,
Yeah,
Mark, when a child is going off in a crash or in the restaurant, not in the crash, we don't call them crashes here, but if they're going off in a restaurant, that mother is starting, or father is starting to feel so young and so powerless and so helpless because they don't want that baby to do that either, but they don't know how to stop it. So go attend to the parent as if they're a child.
Yeah. I mean, just giving them a little bit. Like sometimes I've gone, "Hey, can I buy you a drink on the plane?" And just go, "Yeah, I'll have a beer." But what they're really wanting is the empathy and the support of somebody else.
You go, I know you're trying. I know this is hard. This must be difficult. Can I just sit with you? Can I take your baby out of your hands for a moment?
When they're not trying, that I'm bothered, Leslie. That's when I'm bothered. Not when they're broken, because sometimes you see a parent and they just look like. I realized this when I looked after my friend's kid for 3 days because to give her a rest and she had some health issues. And I realized, oh shit, this is incessant. I think this is what people who have never looked after kids, I've done it residentially with special needs kids. And we used to get 1 day off every 10 days. And by 10 days, you were broken. You were just broken. And that 1 day off was like, you just went to the bar, it just shook as you drank, you know. And and that's what I think people don't get who've never looked after kids residentially, whether they be parents or not, is how it doesn't stop. And it's like you don't know what that parent has gone through for the last 2 months of sleeplessness, of, you know, you're just seeing the one thing at the end of it, right?
Exactly. So if you're the responsible adult, you got to still deal with your discomfort because it sucks, you know. It's like you don't want to hear a baby crying on the plane, because you got stuff to do. You work with that, and then you go, the reality is this baby is crying on the plane, and I'm an adult.
Yeah, boys noise reduction headphones, £200, best £200 you'll ever spend. Boys noise reduction headphones. Let me put an advert for them. If boys want to sponsor me, I'm a big user of your headphones. So
but I want to tell you that really quickly. That's your capacity as an adult. As a child, you couldn't leave. You couldn't go get new parents, right? Sure. So you had to, you know, do things like be upset and. But as an adult, like you say, you can put your headphones on. You can go offer help. You can move to the back of the plane. You can do all kinds of things. That baby can't do anything.
Yeah. You know, that's quite a good frame generally in life, isn't it? Just because, you know, it doesn't have to be a child trigger. Sometimes I'm with my colleague and I'm like, with Daniela talking about the conference and one of us is freaking out because of some bullshit. And I'm like, is it my turn to be the grown up today? Okay. Yeah. And I'm sort of stepping into the grown-up position until she can. And then we swap. It only goes wrong when both of us can't do it. We had one day where that happened. But generally, at least one of us can be the grown-up. You know, that seems to be the secret.
The safe seat is where we get to go back and be with that child and grow it up healthily, right? We get to reparent ourselves in that safe seat and I always say, talk to the feelings. Just talk. Don't believe them.
If you're dealing with men, call it the throne of manliness, not the safe seat. That we've got to rebrand that.
You can call it that.
The throne of manliness. That's what it's called for the dads. Okay. Anyway,
you can call it that.
Mindful Fatherhood by Vidya Dasa, my friend, if anyone wants a good book for the dads. Okay, Leslie, this is cool. So people find you online at purejoyparenting.com. That sounds like an oxymoron to me, but I'm going to take your word for it. Purejoyparenting.com, is that right?
That is it. They can find me on Facebook. What should they check
out there? Is there anything to tempt people there?
Oh, I have my courses. I do small groups with parents, 6 to 8 parents, which are my favorite modality to do, because then you don't feel so alone.
Try Leslie online for $97 US. That sounds like a bargain. And you've got a podcast too.
I do.
Feel free to put this on your own podcast as well. We can give you the recording for that if you like. There's a blog there. Cool. Any other sort of good books or good resources that is this the Chinese child blowing something by it says podcasts, who's now an adult by the looks of things. Okay, so any other good resources you recommend for any parents out there who hate me now and they go, okay, Mark, shut up, enough of you. Where can I get some resources? What would you recommend for
One
them
of
to
my
jump?
favorite books, it is not a parenting book, but if I know you have a lot of people that are spiritual seekers and Buddhist and embodiment people, is by Bruce Tift. It's called Already
Okay.
Free.
Already Free, it's called.
Already
Okay.
Free. Yes. I highly, highly recommend that book. It'll blow your mind.
Got it. Take a
He
look.
does the fruitional view as well as the Western view of developmental psychology, as well as the
Oh,
fruitional view.
yeah, that guy's clever, isn't he? He's got a very sophisticated view of
Amazing.
psychological and spiritual sort of combined. Yeah, he's
Yes.
really quite sophisticated. Okay,
Amazing.
and in the sort of parenting space, anything that people should check out? This is all new to me, so totally ignorant.
Yeah. Yeah, just go over to my page. I have a Facebook practice page where people come in, where I do inquiry questions almost every other
Okay.
day. And it's Pure Joy Parenting Practice page. So you can get a lot more information on how I work. I mean, it's a
Leslie
little,
Potter, like Harry Potter, right? So
yes,
cultural
and
appropriation.
Pure Joy Parenting Practice page.
There you go. There you go. And then there's on the website, there's parenting paused,
Yes.
embarrassed in public by your child's behavior. Got it. And then there's pictures of mums with screaming babies and happy families and all sorts on there. Good, good, good. All right. Well, I've given you quite a hard time today, but you've taken it very well. I hope you don't need to sort of sit on a safe seat after this.
Not at all. I enjoyed
Fun sparring with you and
it.
being devil's advocate. So don't take it personally. I'm just a naughty child.
Not at
And
all.
you have a closing message about the body, Leslie? You're still smiling. That's good. A closing message about the body for all our listeners in relating
Be
to anything.
kind, be kind, be gentle as you come back into your body. Most likely you are going to hit a lot of those pockets of early things that happened. Even if you had a healthy childhood, there's a lot of, in traditional parenting, again, we're not taught to really stay in our bodies. So be gentle, be kind, and loving.
Boom. I think you nailed it there. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Take care. Thank you.